Atlanta Falcons going through what y'all need to know to make some money on this team in 2021. So last year, 4-12, obviously not good, really not good in really any way. They had a defense that was bad in just about every way you can be bad for most of the year. They had a super inconsistent offense. They had some of the worst coaching we've seen in football for a while, and overall just a really negative year. Not for me, though. As far as my record goes, this is another team, 7-3, where you're making a whole lot of money if you're betting with me on them. The strong bet's the only one I actually put money on. Overall, this team, I did struggle sometimes to keep up with the inconsistencies of their offense and why or why not that would happen. But overall, I'd say pretty good. And obviously, 7-3 speaks for itself. So this roster in 2021, what are we looking at? So losses wise, there's some names here, one in particular, and that is Julio Jones. Julio Jones is still a super elite receiver, one of the top 3-4 guys in the NFL, no question. He's incredibly valuable. He's super, super fast. He affects defenses in ways that I don't know if any other receiver in the NFL does. Now, he does have some flaws in this game. We'll talk about that once we talk about the Titans and what they do, but his loss is not to be taken lightly. That dude is a monster, and I understand that he's missed some games with injuries over the last couple of years, but you don't just lose receivers that good every day. Past him, Alex Mack and James Carpenter. Alex Mack has been an okay starter for a long time. I think he had gotten, by the last couple of years of his career here, fairly overrated. He is not the athlete that he once was, and that does limit his upside. He's still an okay player, and what they have, we'll see. But and then James Carpenter, a guy who I think was pretty underrated, actually. I don't think he was all that bad. Obviously, he was a former first-round bust. He's not like a great player or anything like that, but he's a guy who, when he did start, actually was competent. Brandon Powell, a player that I want to talk about because once we get to the wide receiver depth chart on this team, it gets real questionable. And Brandon Powell's a player who was like pretty damn good when he played, or pretty good when he played for the Falcons. He wasn't like elite or anything like that, but he showed flashes and more than enough snaps for me to be comfortable saying he should have been probably given a chance here. And you got to wonder about the choices they made as far as the receivers they ended up keeping. Laquan Treadwell, though, whatever. I actually think he's not like the end of the world, but not a big loss. And then Todd Gurley and Ito Smith, two bad running backs who don't matter. Defensively, there are a lot more guys who have started a lot more games. So you lose Charles Harris, former first-round bust himself, not particularly good. He's whatever, as a rotational speed rusher at this point. They just recently cut DeAndre Nat. That I have real questions about. He's not a great player by any means, but he does fit into the classic fat nose tackle who stuffs the run mold, and he actually does it pretty well, which is not a skill set they currently possess. Alan Bailey is a player who's pretty underrated. I understand he had a very large contract he didn't necessarily live up to, but that guy was still productive when he was on the field if you actually watched what he individually was doing. He's surrounded by horrible defense, but he's not that bad. Bloody Ray Wilson and Darqueze Dennard, two corners who are legitimately pretty good. Not elite guys or shutdown guys or anything like that, but two players who have shown that they can play, especially Dennard, who's shown for a long time that he can play in the NFL. Then, Keanu Neal, Ricardo Allen, longtime starting safeties. Neither of those guys I'm particularly big fan of. Ricardo Allen especially, I think it's horrible at this point in his career as a safety, but still started a lot of games. Keanu Neal, I actually suspect will be okay as a linebacker for the Cowboys, but he's gone too. And then DeMonte KZ, borderline superstar at safety. The dude is awesome. They're absolutely going to miss him. Struggle to see talent like that walk out the door for free. He's not like the greatest safety in the world or anything like that, but it's not ideal. As far as additions goes, it's tough. It's real tough. So you bring in Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson at running back. Mike Davis we'll talk about him more once we get to the position by position reviews or previews for this season. But two running backs. James Andrews, a guy who has barely competed for starting spots on the Jets offensive line for a couple years. AJ McCarron is an okay backup, and then Tajay Sharp, a player who's not particularly good, didn't even make it all the way through last year on an NFL roster. Defensively, I do like Fabian Moreau. I do think he's a starting level corner. We'll talk more about him later. Past that, though, Deron Harmon's just kind of okay as a safety. Eric Harris is one of the absolute worst safeties in football. And then they bring in Tuzar Skipper from the Titans very recently as a edge rusher. Is he an impactful player? No. So then we talk about the draft class, with rookies. Once they play in the NFL, we can talk about how good they are. Until then, I'm not super concerned about it. You don't want to create expectations one way or the other because you're just going to end up being wrong. So we can talk about how good they are once they actually play in the NFL. Until then, this is what their draft class looks like. So position by position, going through talking about what this team has, what they don't have, and what you can expect at the position in 2021. So number in the top right is the total number of players ranked at that position. Number to the right of the name is where that player is out of that number. So Matt Ryan, the 7th quarterback, is a 70. Matt Ryan is good. Matt Ryan is not great. Matt Ryan is absolutely dependent on the state of his offense, and he does have a range of outcomes that includes, obviously, MVP level play. That is not going to be the case this year, but Matt Ryan is a quarterback. Yeah, he's a guy who, when given a comfortable pocket and a offense that is intelligent and creating yards, he can pilot it extremely well. So, I mean, he gets up there with the best of them. You know, the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, he's not at that level, but he can do stuff like that, especially on like a numbers basis. He, however, outside of great situations like that, he starts to have flaws that really start to pop up. He's not good outside of structure at all. He doesn't make plays with his legs, obviously. He doesn't actually interact with the pocket all that well. He's even more statuesque than I think he's given credit for. I don't know if you want to call it credit, but he is he's a quarterback who is dependent on the system around him, and when it's good, he can be good. We'll talk about what it looks like when we get through the offense as a whole here, but you're still definitely comfortable with him as a starter. You can do a million times worse very easily in the NFL. He is going to still do things on a game-to-game basis to provide value for your offense in terms of just taking easy throws, making good-ish decisions, and things like that for sure. AJ McCarron I talked about. He's a actually okay backup. He's not quite in the tier of guys. It's like, oh shit, like you're just kind of screwed. Now, he's not really going to add a lot of value to your offense for sure. It's not like he's played a large number of snaps in the NFL either, but whatever. And then Felipe Franks, late round rookie, whatever. So at running back, so I talk about with running back. So there's only like 8 to 10 guys that really matter in the NFL that actually like bring something unique and valuable to your offense. The Falcons don't have that, or even like kind of a little bit of it. There is a large, very large kind of second tier of running backs in the NFL of guys who, if you give them, 20, 25 touches a game, are going to be productive. Like very likely they're going to do fine. They're not really doing anything that anyone else in that tier is or isn't going to do. Mike Davis fits into that tier. He is on the lower end. He is a guy who actually does have some shake to him, can cause tacklers to not hit him cleanly. He's actually decent as a receiver-ish. But he is not fast as top end. He's not super strong at the point of contact. And with the receiver thing, I think there are real concerns that the number of catches and fantasy points he put up like that last year was just by virtue of taking Christian McCaffrey's spot in the offense and being asked to do not the same things, because he can't do the same things, but things that are similar. And I think if you were to put a lot of other running backs in the spot that he was in last year, you're going to get similar, if not better, production. Not to say he's horrible, though. Like I said, he's whatever. If you give him 20 carries, I'm not like scared or anything. You're going to do okay. Past him, though, Cordell Patterson, he should really just be a kick returner at this point. As an offensive player, while theoretically he has the vision and straight line speed to matter, in practice, he's just he just steers like a battleship. Basically, he's not agile. If he's not running full speed, his vision doesn't show up the same way as a running back than he does as a kick returner. He's not valuable as a receiver. Yikes. Quadri Olson is a guy who I actually think is a good goal line back, and I would like to see more carries just because I'm curious, because I think there's a chance he's decent, but effectively, nothing. And then Deonta Foreman, a guy they just signed, player who is not good. He's not fast enough to matter, and he's not so strong or anything like that. To reach the point of like a Chris Carson or something like that. He's just not very good at receiver. So first, I'm going to get the good one out of the way. Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's awesome. That dude is amazing. He's pretty much elite. He is one of the only receivers outside of the top 5 that actually can reach the level of what Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs do to guys in man coverage. Calvin Ridley will burn dudes so bad. and get so open in like a good time frame that he is going to bring just so much value to your offense. Now, what keeps him out of that tier, there's a few things. One, he really, for whatever reason you want to say, he does not perform the same against zone coverage. He doesn't like move into space all that well. He doesn't quite seem to understand why defenders move the way that they do mentally. Again, I don't know that exactly, but it pretty clearly seems to be the case when you watch the way he functions against zone defenses. And he is not physical. Really, he can get, if he's getting touched at the catch point, while occasionally he'll come down with stuff. When you look at like him compared to other receivers around the NFL, he's definitely way on the lower end. And as a guy after the catch too, despite how quick he is in his routes and stuff, he's kind of whatever there. But I just want to get the negatives out of the way so we can focus on the positives. And that's if this team is playing against man coverage, Calvin Ridley is going, like, if you give him 3-4 seconds against any corner in the league, he's going to get open the vast majority of the time. And he does it all the way up and down the field, too. He's super good. Russell Gage, a player I like quite a bit, actually. He's a slot receiver. I think he actually adds value to that position instead of just being, run out there as a guy who happens to be productive in a place that it's easy to be productive. He has some shake to him. He can separate, again, against man underneath. He actually has the ability to kind of be, like, to take, 10 targets and turn them into meaningful production that's actually helping your offense instead of just being happening to be the guy who's catching the ball for 3-yard gains, stuff like that. He's good. Now, he's not he's not a good enough athlete to be a whole lot more than that. He's never really going to be a big play guy. While I think he's okay at tracking the ball in the air, he's not, a monster at it. So I will mention that. Past those two, though, what the hell are they doing? Right. So you get Christian Blake, a player who's played enough snaps for me to be sure that he's not like good. Now there's a chance I suppose there's a chance he's not awful. I think that's probably already the case. He's also shown enough to he's not one of these guys who's in the very, very, very bottom of the wide receiver rankings, but he doesn't get separation really. He doesn't add anything to your offense. And as of right now, he's projected to basically be a starter in 3 receiver sets, which is super concerning. You have Olamide Zaccheaus, guy who I think has 1 career catch, and it was like a really, really long touchdown. And he's very clearly fast. But that's it as far as what he's actually shown. And then you have a bunch of guys who are either like late round rookies, guys who have bounced around at different teams, and or veterans who just aren't good, in like Trevor Davis and Tajay Sharp. I said Tajay Sharp, I just, I guess theoretically, if you give him, enough time to separate against a corner, playing outside leverage when he's running, a deep route over the middle, then sure. But who else can do that? Every other NFL receiver. So they really, really struggle once you get past those first 2. And frankly, those first 2, while I like them a lot individually, they're not, this same type of elite tier that you kind of need to drive an offense when it's kind of as many struggles as this do. Because here, I will say, a tight end, they're chilling, they're set for sure. Kyle Pitts is a rookie, so I don't want to assume too much good or bad about him, but he definitely has the chance to be the type of tight end who really matters in the NFL, I think. So I think the way to kind of look at him when we talk about, projecting this offense forward into this year, there are probably 2 types of outcomes for him, right? I think the highest end outcome that you're hoping for as a rookie, keep in mind rookie tight ends are not good very often, is he gets to be somewhere in the ballpark of like Gerald Everett. That is super high praise for him, by the way. I think Gerald Everett is awesome. And if Kyle Pitts can hit even 90% of what Gerald Everett is as a rookie, you're golden. You are set at that position. But again, just keep in mind, with tight ends, for whatever reason, their rookie years don't go particularly well very often. So that's, I think, the high end. And if you get that, it's going to help this offense a lot. The other type of season, I think, is something you see from first-round tight ends pretty frequently that despite, no matter how hyped they are, that considering T.J. Hockenson as a rookie, Noah Fant as a rookie, O.J. Howard is a rookie, all those guys, Eric Ebron, back to another top 10 tight end, guys that had hype and could theoretically do things. Now, none of them could do the things Kyle Pitts does. I will grant you that for sure. But there is a chance that, he as a rookie, again, I think he's going to end up being a lot better than that, but gives that level of production. So those are kind of the two ways I can see that going, probably. But regardless of what happens with him, they do have Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is a good player. He's a guy who actually matters kind of as a tight end. He can take the ball and move into space, like run into space and actually create yards as a runner for your team. He's not too bad as a route runner. If he's supposed to be open, he will be open. He has decent hands. Overall, definitely a useful player. He's an okay blocker too. Probably a little bit better than okay blocker too. So I definitely like him. And if he's your tight end too, it's real hard to do better than that. Then even past that, you do have Jaden Graham, a guy who's played some okay snaps at times in his career. I'm not super excited about him or anything, but he has shown that if he's on your field, you're not screwed, which is nice to have as a third string guy for sure. Then you have some blocking guys. They trade for Lee Smith. I don't really understand that. Lee Smith is bad and old. Luke Stalker is literally just a better blocking tight end already on the team. So, whatever. Keith Smith is kind of a mediocre to bad fullback, and then some late round / undrafted guys you're not really concerned about. Offensive line wise, boy, we'll see. To start with the positives, their tackle duo, specifically Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews is good. Definitely, he's a player I'm more than comfortable starting. I would want starting on my team for sure. He can mirror most even good edge rush in the NFL. He can definitely struggle at the high end with guys, like the Bosa brothers or Khalil Mack or Myles Garrett, stuff like that. But that's going to happen to pretty much every tackle in the NFL that's not one of the best, absolute best. And so he's good about not being the reason your offensive line fails for sure. As a run blocker, he's actually a pretty damn good athlete, which I think gets lost sometimes. And he makes a difference. He's a good player. Caleb McGarry does some things I really, really like, but still has some pretty glaring issues that do concern me to a point. So he is really good as a run blocker a lot of times. He is a really good athlete in space, and he's not just one of these guys who moves out, to the second level and then just kind of misses or gets run around or doesn't quite understand mentally how to actually eliminate a defender, right? He's not one of those guys. He has shown pretty consistently that he will bury linebackers at times, that he will move double teams into linebackers, that he can even affect safeties in the open field. He's a really good player about that. As a pass protector, though, which is the more important of the two, obviously, he still has real struggles with elite guys. I mean, I think from his rookie year, he has a game, one of the worst games you're ever going to see where he plays. I believe it was Khalil Mack. I'm not exactly sure though, where he just gets smoked over and over and over and over again. Now he did get better his second year for sure. Like I said, I actually like him kind of, but he's still going to struggle with power rushers and especially elite power rushers, which can be a concern. Depth wise, you have Jalen Mayfield as I think a third round rookie. Willie Beavers is taking first team reps for them in training camp while Caleb McGarry comes back from injury. I hope that doesn't happen. That 54th ranking for him, by the way. That's a typo. He should not be ranked. Matt Gunnell started some games last year. I actually like him a lot better as a guard, as a tackle. He really concerns me as a pass projector over a large number of snaps. And then some guys that you're just not excited about even remotely. At guard, Chris Lindstrom is fucking awesome. That dude is really, really, really good at pretty much everything you would want a guard to be good at. He run blocks very well. He is... I was going to say perfect. He's definitely not perfect in pass protection, but he's up there. He's way on the higher end of the scale as far as that position goes in the NFL. I don't think he has quite the individual playmaking power that other guards, like a guy like Quentin Nelson does, where he's going to, pancake a nose tackle and hit a linebacker and stuff like that. He doesn't really do that stuff very often, but, that's not what that's not what you need out of a guard to have a good offense. Yeah, he plays really well. At the other spot, though, yikes. So James Andrews, that 50th ranking, while that might look good on paper there, keep in mind that is actually where he ranks out of centers because he's been a center for his career, which puts that in a lot different light. He has not been good anytime he's been on an NFL field. He's not so bad that I don't think he should be in the NFL because there are some players that I think about that. That's not quite the case with him, but I really struggle to see how he positively impacts your offense in any way or any phase of the game. And and he's played enough snaps for me to be pretty comfortable in that. So yikes. And then if it's not him, it's who the hell could, it's late round rookies, undrafted guys that have bounced around. It's not encouraging. And then at center, they're turning the keys over to Matt Hennessy there, and that's not something I'm excited about. He was a third round rookie with a little bit of hype last year, a couple years ago, whatever. And he has played some games. He hasn't gotten on the field too much, but when he's been out there, he has not really been very good. He is, I will say, an okay athlete, and you can see that show up. He can get up and down the line okay. He can get to the second level a little bit, but his play strength is not very good. He still makes a lot of mistakes. He can get cleanly beat more. Like, there are signs of him getting cleanly beat on tape way more often than I'm comfortable with, especially given the small sample size in which he played. So I guess technically, he obviously could get better. He's a young player, hasn't played a lot of snaps, but he is not someone I'm encouraged about either. And then you have Drew Dahlman, I believe third, maybe fourth round rookie from this year, who's competing maybe at the guard or center spot. He's a rookie. I don't really want to speak to it, but offense as a whole, this team, I'll say, despite how negative I've kind of been position by position, let's start with the positives, and that is you do still have Matt Ryan throwing to potentially 4 pretty good, maybe even elite weapons with Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Kyle Pitts, and Hayden Hurst, which is nice. That does give you a chance, at production for sure, but their offensive line is really concerning because most of the time, at this point in the year, you can at least look around at most offensive lines and say, yeah, if they all stay healthy, they're going to be decent. Here, I can't even say that with any level of certainty. In fact, I'd guess more likely than not, they're not going to be all that good because of their center and their left guard. And it's not like the other players in the line are elite outside of maybe Chris Lindstrom. I don't know if elite's quite the right word, but yeah, so once you bring that in the equation, it's kind of, you're talking about Matt Ryan, a guy who needs a very good offensive structure around him, and he doesn't have it because of what's in front of him. Now, it's not the end of the world, and as we get into the schedule preview at the end of this video, if they play teams who aren't going to take advantage of how potentially bad their offensive line is, then it's a whole different story. But depending on the defense to be bad for your offense to be good, that's just called bad offense most of the time. Now, I will say, too, and I want to speak to this, that Matt Ryan and the Falcons were dealing with some of the absolute worst offensive coaching in the NFL for a couple of years now. Really, really bad stuff, similar to the Lions in a lot of ways, in that they were just asking players to do weird things that took a long time down the field and weren't really setting guys up for success. They weren't taking advantage of a lot of the things that modern NFL offenses do to make things easier for themselves in terms of getting guys open over the middle, using screens and misdirection and stuff like that to get guys more into space on the edges of a defense. And this team brings in Arthur Smith. He's been the Titans offensive coordinator for a couple of years now. That is, I can guarantee you, an upgrade. But is Arthur Smith the level of offensive genius that Kyle Shanahan was when this team was the best offensive football? No, not even a little bit. So Arthur Smith is a guy I do kind of like a lot of the things he does offensively. I will say I do think he provides a baseline of pretty good production and play calling. I'm comfortable with that. But a lot of his hype as a genius came around because of his success with running a lot of kind of trick plays with the Titans. Now, that is going to translate. Don't get me wrong, the Falcons are still going to do some goofy shit, and it's going to work because of Arthur Smith. But that's not the same thing as play to play, drive to drive, making things super easy on your offense. He's not great about that. His run scheme isn't actually all that good. He happened to have a unique situation with Derrick Henry and the offensive line in Tennessee. He's okay at it. I don't want to speak too ill of him, but he's not all that good, to be clear. So there's that. Like I said, I do think Arthur Smith is an upgrade very clearly, but I don't think he's quite the savior that maybe Falcons fans would hope he's going to be. Yeah. So talking about the defense, though, and I hope you enjoyed that, whatever level of positivity that was while it lasted, if you're a Falcons fan, because it's going to go out the window real quick here after we talk about Grady Jarrett. So defensively, position by position. Start with Grady Jarrett. He's awesome. He's elite. He's amazing. He does things from the interior that effectively only Aaron Donald and maybe sometimes Chris Jones can, as far as winning instantly even beating good interior offensive linemen and getting to the quarterback in ways that the quarterback has no option but to deal with, right? Because there are guys like Fletcher Cox or DeForest Buckner or other interior rushers who are super valuable and do really good things as far as making the quarterback react to their presence or them how they're affecting the pocket, stuff like that, but struggle with like cleanly winning and making the quarterback stop what he's doing and change the way that the play is going to flow. Grady Jarrett does that. Again, he's the only guy that I would put up there with even in the same ballpark as Aaron Donald with his ability to do that. So he's super elite. That skill set is incredibly valuable. He actually does it enough times a game to be like impactful. The dude, he's awesome. As a run defender, though, which is going to be a common theme on this team, he is very much the opposite. What keeps him from being in the same tier as like those top guys is he is pretty damn garbage still as a run defender. Now, he's not the worst thing in the world. He can still, like, he uses that quickness and ability to break through line of scrimmage very quickly, at times effectively as a run defender to make plays in the backfield, but it's not something that's super common. And when he's not doing that, he will get like bulldozed 5 yards off the ball and it gets kind of ugly. Past him, it's hard to say what they're doing. So you have Jonathan Bullard, a guy who's bounced around quite a few NFL rosters at this point, never really gotten on the field for a significant amount of snaps. There's probably pretty clearly a reason to that. I will admit that I've watched a very small sample size of his, but it is enough for me to be very sure that he's not an impactful player. So what you're hoping for is a guy who doesn't suck, but I can't even guarantee that. So, we'll see. You have Marlon Davidson, who was a rookie last year, who was, kind of shot up draft boards late, was hurt a lot of last year. So we'll give him that. But when he was on the field, he wasn't particularly impressive. He showed a little bit of the explosiveness that got him drafted high, but it wasn't anything that was like, oh, yeah, he's using that well as an NFL player. It's more just like, oh, that's cool, I guess. And then he would get run out of a play anyway. So I'm concerned about that. John Kaminsky, I actually think, is pretty damn horrible. So in theory, he's a interior, like inside out versatile rusher who's going to bring pressure and penetration from around the defensive line. In practice, he doesn't do that at all, and he's just bad. Which, hate to say it, hate to be mean to the guy, but that's just true. He very, very, very rarely actually is impactful as a rusher. And when he's not, he's just bad. And past them, Taquan Graham is I think 4th round rookie or something like that, but it's a bunch of guys who not encouraging. And then you talk about edge rushers, and, it's even worse. So you do have Dante. So as pass rushers, right, what do you have in this group of guys? So Steven Means tries hard. Dante Fowler is he is one of the guys. So, he's the only one on this team with a chance to be a useful edge rusher. He actually can do some stuff as a speed rusher in terms of bending the corner, getting around the pocket, getting to the top of the pocket. That is useful. That is not super common around the NFL at this point, and that has a place on a team for sure. His problem is that, one, that is not something that happens particularly consistently. Two, when he does it, it's not like he's elite at it. He's not out here just, wrecking dudes or getting around the corner instantly. And three, he sucks at everything else. Really bad run defender, like not a disciplined edge, like contain rusher. So that's tough, right? When that's your best. And then, like I said, Steven Means tries hard, but he's really lacks the athleticism to mean more than that. Jacob Tuioti Mariner, he's not a good pass rusher at all. So Falcons fans are probably going to point to the one game against the Raiders last year where he had like 4 sacks or something goofy like that. I don't know if it was 4, but if you look at what really happened, so I will say he tries hard like Steven Means, and he actually functions a little bit as like a contain rusher, but all of those pressures and sacks pretty much were just Derek Carr happening to get spooked by like Grady Jarrett or by somebody else, and running out of the pocket in his direction where he was just standing ready to chase Derek Carr, who is not exactly a world famous athlete. And so if you want to put stock into that, go ahead, but you're going to end up just hurting yourself and your ability to understand why this defense is going to be bad because he's not good. And then, again, guys who bounced around and or late rookies. And then as run defenders, it gets a little bit better. Steven Means and Tuioti Mariner, I actually think can do some work there. They both, again, they play hard, they play disciplined, they have decent strength, but neither of them are difference makers in that area of the field at all. And then Tuzar Skipper, I failed to mention, he is very, very large on the field, but he's not somebody that despite enough snaps for me to, make a declaration on him. Not somebody I'm ready to say is a useful player. Off-ball linebacker. So get back to positive here. These are both guys in Deion Jones and Foyesade Oluokun starters who I like a whole lot at certain things. Deion Jones is actually similar to Grady Jarrett in a lot of ways, in that he is like the elite of the elite as far as a pass defender goes. He is right there with Bobby Wagner, with Fred Warner. He's every bit as good as them. He is extremely fast, extremely smart, has really good instincts. Deion Jones is famous for that specific thing for a reason. Like, he stands up with all the Eric Kendricks too. He's right there. You might even better Eric Kendricks, actually. He's faster, but and that's super valuable. Like, listen, he's an elite linebacker. But he is not good as a run defender. He does have the smarts to do it. He clearly understands like where run plays are going, what to do. He doesn't like react slow. He doesn't over pursue badly or anything like that. But his big lack of size really shows up when offensive linemen or tight ends or whatever can actually touch him. He's not good about shedding blocks. He's not good about getting around them. He's not good about making tackles or plays through offensive players that aren't the ball carrier, which normally wouldn't necessarily be all that big of a deal. But if you remember when we talked about the defensive line, which, by the way, I'm actually going to jump back to because I skipped Tyler Davison, maybe the worst starting nose tackle in the NFL right now. Oh, my God. So I'm sorry to interrupt the Deion Jones thing, but I have to talk about this. Tyler Davison, right? So there's this type of player around the NFL, and I mentioned it earlier. They're just like fat guys who plays nose tackle, who keep the line of scrimmage where it's supposed to be, and don't get smoked. Tyler Davison is that, except for he gets shoved off the ball 5 yards every time the ball is hiked, and he doesn't add anything else. I think he is legitimately horrible. I guess against bad centers, sometimes he's able to like use his hands to get in gaps a little bit, but like it's very infrequent. Anytime the dude faces double teams, even just a good center or a good guard, he gets smashed. And them cutting Adrian Sinnett to just give him nose tackle snaps, a position that's theoretically very easy to find good players at. What the hell? So anyway, back to the linebackers. Deion Jones. Yeah, why I had to talk about that was because Deion Jones does struggle if he's not clean, which not going to be the case. Foyesade Oluokun, basically the same player, just a lot worse. Now, keep in mind, I think Deion Jones is amazing. I think Oluokun is good. He's very useful. There are a lot of defenses in the NFL where if he were to be put onto their rosters, I would think way differently about his impact in 2021. But because of his presence on this team, you're talking about a guy who is very, very rangy, who is a really good athlete, who does have some instincts as a ball, like a playmaker, and is overall a pretty good player. But he's a guy who's tremendously weak on contact, doesn't play the run particularly well, even mentally. He can do the stuff that I said Deion Jones doesn't do. He can over pursue. He can kind of misdiagnose what gap the run is attacking. He's not particularly good at that type of stuff. He's still very weak. Like I said, he will get washed out by offensive players pretty comfortably. And despite being as good of an athlete as he is, he's not like a great coverage player, especially man-to-man, which, granted, doesn't really exist mostly around the linebacker position. But don't let it, just because he's a really good athlete, don't let him fool you into thinking that. But not to be too negative, I do like him a lot. Again, if he was on other teams, I'd like him a lot more. So then you have some depth here. Michael Walker, as a rookie, was actually pretty decent. One of the better rookie linebackers, funnily enough, in the NFL last year. Now, that's not saying much. Most rookie linebackers suck, like the vast majority of the time. So it is encouraging that he didn't, but it was also a small sample size. He's way better as a run defender, which, you could argue this team needs. And actually, there's some matchups where I would understood if he started over Oluokun, but not somebody that I'm really excited about as anything more than like a third/rotational run defending linebacker. Brandon Copeland, actually kind of the same thing. He'd been in the NFL for a long time as an edge rusher, finally moved to inside linebacker by, I believe, the Patriots, might have been the Jets. But either way, once he moved there, he actually showed that he can play a little bit. Not somebody you want starting, not somebody you want on the field in any pass scenario, but as a run defending inside linebacker, I actually think he's okay. Then you have some, whatever rookies or undrafted guys. At corner. I do like this corner pairing. AJ Terrell, I'm going to speak very highly of him. He's very good. I think he was pretty clearly the best rookie corner in the NFL last year. He's a guy who showed that he can play even with good receivers in the NFL. Now, I don't necessarily think he's going to keep up with like elite guys, hence why I don't have him ranked higher than 27th. Like, he's not somebody I'm trusting to cover Devontae Adams. Not that exists in the NFL, but he not somebody I'm trusting with the very best, but he showed he can play. He's not lost. He can actually physically cover guys. He's going to make play. Like, AJ Terrell is very good. Fabian Moreau is a player who I think should have gotten more chances with the Washington football team over the last couple of years. I understand there were better corners ahead of him, but he's a decent player every time he's been on the field. He's not someone I'm like terrified of. I don't think he gets burned almost ever. Like, I like him a lot. But neither of them are elite players or even particularly close. And once you get past those two in this corner, in this secondary, in this cornerback room, oh my God, Isaiah Oliver is horrid, is absolutely borderline unplayable as a starting corner. He is a big, long corner theoretically. He's a big, long outside corner, the type that gets drafted by the Seahawks and shit like that. But he's a big, long outside athletic corner who cannot play the ball at the catch point to save his life. He's so incredibly bad at it. He gets mossed regularly whenever he's on the field. And he doesn't get his head around to the ball. He's very bad at it. He's also pretty slow laterally. The same weaknesses that show up with the Seahawks guys and like Trey Flowers or Shaquille Griffin, those types of dudes, where agile modern NFL receivers just kind of leave him in the dust. That also happens to him. He's just not somebody who should be playing on an NFL team. At least as a starter, for sure. And we'll see what happens because either him or slot corner Kendall Sheffield is. And take everything I said about Isaiah Oliver negatively, apply it to Kendall Sheffield, and then remove like 6 inches. Kendall Sheffield is like an undersized slot corner who cannot keep up with anybody in coverage. I think might literally be the worst player at the catch point in the NFL. He gets mossed so often. It's frankly incredible. It's nuts. It's amazing. And his use, I don't know what he does like for a team. I don't know why you would justify playing him snaps. So yeah, not to be too negative, but that's your top 4 there. And then you have Chris Williams and a rookie, whatever last year bounced around. Avery Williams is literally just a returner, and Darren Hall is just like a 3rd, 4th round rookie. At safety, I do like Dron Harmon a little bit. I think he's a guy, while he's not going to be a big playmaker, especially at this point in his career, he can functionally play like a deep center fielder type safety, and he's not going to get your team killed. That's where it ends though, because Eric Harris, holy shit, he's one of the worst safeties in the NFL. When you look at what he was doing on the Raiders, he was frequently the reason. Now, there were other problems around him, I will admit, too, but he was frequently the cause of them giving up so many big plays over and over again over the last 2-3 years. I do understand that he had that one year where he had a lot of interceptions, but if you look at what happened in that, he was just recipient of a lot of lucky kind of tip balls and or just quarterbacks' bad decisions. And B, when he wasn't doing that, he was still getting fucked up down the field. Like, he theoretically isn't the athlete to keep up and play that type of position. He's, I'm pretty sure, really fast in a straight line. But he gets mispositioned so often. He gets fooled by quarterbacks and how they move their eyes so often. He doesn't understand NFL route cut. Like, he's just really, really, really bad. And he's probably going to start for this team. So then you have Richie Grant, who's a rookie, maybe to get excited about. He's a rookie, though. I don't really know saying that. And then Jalen Hawkins, a player who I actually thought performed okay as a box safety last year in very, very limited amount of snaps. But when you look at this defense as a whole, what the hell, man? So there are some pieces individually that I like, even some that I think are amazing. But how this defense fits together as a whole gets so ugly, right? Because as a run defense, how do they even have a chance to be successful? You know what I mean? So, like, there is the occasional play where Grady Jarrett is going to get in the backfield, stop the ball at the handoff, and be really good about that, for sure. That, however, is not something that you're going to depend on game to game, and definitely not like drive to drive. You're insane if you think that's going to happen more than a few times in a game. But past him, the rest of their defensive line is probably horrible defending the run outside of maybe Jonathan Billard, who might be like replacement level. And then you have linebackers who, despite being very good at specific things, very much struggle. Again, I talked about it earlier, when they're forced to fight through blockers and fight through traffic, which is going to be every play because of the status of the defensive line. And then you have edge defenders who, while try hard and can do okay things, and Steven Means and Tuya Mariner aren't particularly good themselves, definitely aren't good enough to make up for the rest of the issues. And funny enough, you actually have maybe the worst run defending secondary in the NFL. Eric Harris, Deron Harmon are not good at that at safeties, and Kendall Sheffield is absolutely horrible at that as a slot corner. So they're going to get smoked on the ground like every game, like every game. And then their pass defense, right? There, they at least have more chances to be successful. But even then, despite how good Grady Jarrett and Deion Jones and Oluokun and AJ Terrell and Fabian Moreau can be, you're probably dealing with a team that's starting minimum 2, maybe 3, like, of the worst players in the NFL in their secondary, which is going to get you killed. You have to, because if you're doing that, you have to be so unbelievably good at every other position to make up for it. And the Falcons aren't, right? They're good enough at 2 positions, Deion Jones and Grady Jarrett, but they're like, there's no other real source of pass rush outside of Grady Jarrett. Their edge rushers definitely are good enough to like be consistently threatening quarterbacks. Unless Marlon Davidson takes a huge step in year 2, they don't have anything else on the interior besides Grady Jarrett. And despite how good, like I said, I think AJ Terrell and Fabian Moreau are, it's not like they're elite shutdown guys themselves. So it's not like they're going to, eliminate a side of the field each, even. They don't reach that level. So, yeah, it's tough. So looking ahead at the schedule, right? So when you look at the schedule, I mean, offensively, right, to have success, you basically need to face a team that's not going to destroy your potentially bad offensive line. Or I think this team actually could have some moderate success against teams that are going to be more passive and play more softer zones where Matt Ryan can take advantage of his pretty decent weapons and his likely better offense to move the ball up and down the field, right? What's interesting, though, is despite how specific those are, is they actually have like kind of a chance at that if you look at their schedule, right? So week 1 and week 2, those defensive lines are very good, especially this team matches up so horribly bad with the Buccaneers. It's pretty comical, but like the Giants are pretty similar to what I just described. The Jets, they do have the defensive line, but what's behind that isn't particularly good. The Dolphins create a lot more pressure through what they do as opposed to how good they are. The Panthers, the Saints, I don't think are particularly talented. That's like the Cowboys, like they face a lot of teams that they have chances of success with. Now, not that it's guaranteed or I'm still particularly encouraged, but just it could be a lot worse if you think about what their weaknesses are. And then defensively, for them to have success, well, that's just going to be hard. But they basically need a team that's not going to just bulldoze them along the offensive line. But again, funny enough, if you look at their schedule, that actually kind of happens sometimes. The Giants don't have a great offensive line. The Washington football team doesn't have a great offensive line. The Jets doesn't have a particularly good offensive line. Like the Dolphins are kind of the Panthers are kind of like they face enough of those teams for me to think that there's a chance they're not the worst team in football, basically, which is not obviously what you hear as a Falcons fan. And I will say that I do think they're going to be competitive in some games where you aren't necessarily going to expect that to be the case because you do still have some offensive talent, and they could look a lot worse if they played a different combination of teams. But overall, yeah, the Falcons in 2021, there's just some horrible rough spots on this roster and not enough to make up for it, despite some legitimately very talented players across the team.